Hey everybody, welcome to Ask Dr. Testosterone, starring Dr. George Tuliados, and this week, very special guest. This is a guy that inspired the hell out of me when I was starting out. He is a three-time Mr. Olympia runner-up. He is the first Arnold Classic champion. He's the founder and owner of Gaspari Nutrition. If you haven't figured it out by now, he is Rich Gaspari. Welcome, Rich. Welcome.
Hey, great to be here on the show, Ronnie.
Yeah. This is
Hello, Richard. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I mean, you invited me. You invited me in your show, so I have to invite you back, of course. And it's my honor to, if perhaps we can cooperate in your next brand that you are launching next year about age management and the Gaspari Nutrition. I'm a big fan of yours as an athlete. You inspired me a lot with your legendary battles and with your excellent posing, especially in 1987 with "It's My Life, It's My Destiny." This song,
Yeah.
I fall in love with bodybuilding with this posing. I mean, it was awesome. It was flawless. And then you were in Athens in Acropolis or Athens Grand Prix 1989, I think.
88,
Yes,
actually, 80, it was the 88 Grand Prix.
it was 88. Yes, and then you
The battles of me and Lee Labrada.
it's when you had
yes,
you had the blonde hair highlights. I
Yeah,
remember.
yeah.
I had my highlights, the blonde hair. Me and Barry DeMay dyed our hair because we were both staying in Venice Beach, and I
Yeah.
trained the last 8 weeks in the Mr. Olympia. I trained in Venice Golds.
Yeah, and
You
I
look
think
phenomenal.
I
Yeah.
remember you speaking of the Acropolis. Didn't you do a photo shoot out by the Acropolis or by some ruins?
We did do some photo shoots. Just to give you a little bit of background on there, before this Grand Prix, I have never gotten less than second. I've not lost to anybody but Lee Haney.
Yeah.
So in this Grand Prix tour, there were 7 shows, and I've already come second in the Olympia in the '88. So I was going into this Grand Prix tour that I feel I was going to just like clean up. So I went into the first show, which was in England. And I was in Germany, won that show, beat Lee Labrada, who came second. Then we actually went to Greece, and Greece was the show that was the first time I lost to another Lee. I
Wow.
lost to Lee Labrada. So it really got to me because if you've never lost to anyone, the only guy that I was always trying to beat was Lee Haney, and then all of a sudden I got beaten by another guy. It kind of sideswiped me, and at that show I was out of vengeance because when I lost in Greece, I really pushed myself to make sure that the next show I would beat Lee Labrada. And it was funny because it was just a battle. It was 7 shows in 30 days. And, I won in Germany. Then it was like a week later in Greece, I lost. I actually didn't do a photo shoot. Lee Labrada did a photo shoot in the Acropolis.
Okay.
I didn't because I was so messed up from losing. I stayed with a friend, Jimmy Mentis. So for the entire week, all I did was train in a gym, and everyone was like trying to figure out where I went because I disappeared. And I was just like, I just stayed. And, Lee thought that now that he beat me, he was going to beat me again. Week later, went against Lee, beat Lee Labrada. And then the following show, he beat me, and it was just back and forth. So it was 7 shows. I won 4. Labrada won 3.
Wow.
I was happy because the last show was in Italy, and I'm Italian, and I won that show, against Lee. And Lee said, I thought that once I beat you, I was going to keep beating you, and you were not that easy because you didn't want to give up. And it was a really true battle. And I have to say that I'm good friends with Lee Labrada. At the time, I was like, he was my, when you're competing, that's the enemy. And, that's the way I treat people when I was competing. I looked at guys and I said, you know what? I'm going to do everything in my power to win, that show and be in my best shape. Lee had great posing. I mean, you talked about posing. Posing, today, and we can get into it, I feel is a lost art compared to what it was.
It's neglected.
I feel I was a good poser. Labrada was a great poser. Someone like Bob Paris was a great poser. I felt it was a good poser, but when you look at my posing today, they're like, wow, that's amazing posing, compared to today's posing. And I do believe, a big mistake they made is when they stopped counting the posing round and they stopped scoring it. Although I know their intentions were, why should posing make a difference if physique is better? But if someone's able to do a better presentation and they both have, slightly, almost equal physiques, and one presents themselves better, that should make a difference to make that guy win. And they stopped doing that. And that's why I think bodybuilders today don't really put as much emphasis into the posing round. And when I was competing, I trained twice a day. And then after training, I would spend an hour to 2 hours practicing posing. Another thing I felt it did is, it really made my muscles much more dense. I was able to stay on stage much longer.
Get the separation.
And had better separation. And I tell people that it's like what I'm seeing also, and not that I'm trying to disparage today's bodybuilders because they're great, but I do see they don't have as much of that density that we had in our day. I know they're much bigger, and that's one of the reasons, but it's just they lost that. And I feel if they can put back posing and make it part of the round, because if they're both close and one guy's a better presenter, you should get more points. And I believe that they do that, it'll make bodybuilding exciting again, because when we watch posing, I'm a great fan. I'm still going to be a great fan of bodybuilding because I love to see the competitors. Actually, I don't know if you guys know, I'm co-emceeing the Mr. Olympia with Sean Ray for the pay-per-view.
Great.
Oh, wow.
So I'm excited about doing that. So I will be doing the Open with Sean Ray.
That's good, because I know they were trying to find experts for every division to work with Sean, and I'm glad they got you for Open. Jeez. Guys, can we do I want to do the Olympia picks with Rich Gaspari, because you're a legendary Olympian. You were second place 3 years in a row. You were top 5 6 years in a row with that show, and you damn near won it. I'm just curious. I know I'm glad to hear you're a fan and you still follow it closely. Who are your picks? If everyone shows up at their very best, what's your top 5 or top 6 this year?
I still, what's really exciting about this show is, it was funny. I was listening to Sean Ray talking about an analogy of, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. If you guys remember, he's back in the 70s. Ali had to I guess he had himself he didn't want to go in the army or whatever happened. And he basically lost his championship.
Gold medal. Yes.
Yeah. And what happened was Joe Frazier ended up winning. And I think it was 2 years that Ali, didn't box. Yeah. And he was a bit rusty going against this blue collar fighter, Joe Frazier. I think the same thing is, you have Brandon Curry, who's the current Mr. Olympia. He's a younger guy. He's this hardworking family guy. He won the Olympia. And now you have Phil Heath making this comeback to be able to tie Ronnie Coleman and Lee Haney's 8-time record. And I think he's going into that show with a vengeance. But the thing is he took 2 years off. And I haven't seen too many bodybuilders that take off that long of a time to go right back into the biggest show and, come in great.
The mindset.
Yeah, the mindset. And I know we were talking, the doctor is like, it's funny. Phil has not really shown what he looks like.
Yeah.
He's not showing.
So do you take that as a sign that he's not, everyone's worried. It's the midsection. That's the only thing we're all curious about with Phil, because that's what we haven't seen in 2 years. And if that's back the way it used to be, I don't know if Brandon's going to be able to beat him. Phil's just damn good. He's that good. But
that's true.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of what people are looking at is wanted to see what his stomach's going to look like. If he's on point like he did before, I feel he's going to win it. I think what's good about this is that he did lose. And, I love Phil, but he's like the Muhammad Ali of bodybuilding. He feels that he's the best ever. He's the gift. And then, he lost to Sean Roden, who, I respect Sean Roden's physique, but I don't think that anywhere that he should ever beat Phil Heath. But he did beat Phil Heath because he came in condition, he won that show. You know, he doesn't have as great a back as Phil and a lot of things, but he's got great symmetry and shape, and he won the show. And I think that really got to him, you know, mentally. And, you know, because Phil never lost, to lose like that, I wasn't sure he was ever going to make a comeback. I thought he was not coming back. And him coming back right now, very exciting for the sport. You asked me, you know, my top 5. I see, you know, William Bonac in there.
Hadi
Raleigh
Chupin, Rami.
You know, I think Hadi Chupin and William Bonac. Hadi Chupin, if he can come in the condition, you know, I look at Hadi Chupin as, when we talk about conditioning, he is in the condition of the bodybuilders of the 90s. You know, he's got that
grainy look.
You know, and but he doesn't have the greatest
structure.
Structure. Yeah. But if he comes in that shape, like the Gaspari rip shape, the other guys are off, he can come into the top 3. You have a great bodybuilder like Bonac right there. So what do you got there? You got Phil Heath, Brandon Curry, William Bonac, Hadi Chupin, and then there's a wild card there. It could be anywhere from Raleigh Winkler, Big Rami,
Dexter.
You know, we forgot about Dexter Jackson. Yeah. So I think it could be a top 5 right there. Could be, you know, it's going to be a big show. I just think this is an exciting show because you got a lot of greats, and it's all, you know, contingent upon what they look like. You know, if Raleigh Winkler can come in great shape, he's a top 3. You know, he can even win Mr. Olympia. Raleigh, you know, Big Rami, has he ever gotten into that crisp shape?
No.
He has to be, you know, I think since he won
2017 was.
Yeah, he looked 17 Olympia when he was second to Phil. That was
his best shape. When he won the New York Pro, great shape. But you know, these are all questions, and who's going to come in, you know, who's going to come on top. You know, newcomers, Hunter Labrada, I'm excited to see him on stage, being that we just talked about, you know, Lee Labrada. Now his son competing, that's pretty cool to see that. So it to me, it's going to be a very exciting show. I'm honored that I'm going to be co-emceeing this, and like you said, being an expert.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to the other classes, honestly, there's so many newcomers in the 212. There's so many newcomers in the classic. I love the classic and I love the 212, but it's almost like the sport is evolving so fast. I know some of the 212 athletes, but since
Rich, do you this towards the wrong direction, perhaps in matters of aesthetics?
I mean, I'm not sure it's going in the wrong direction. I think there's been this change in the sport. You know, after, you know, Brandon Curry, they said he wasn't in great condition, you know, and, you know, all the athletes were off, you know. I think because of that, I think these athletes are going to try to come in better shape because they're, you know, they had this, I don't know where it was an interview with Ronnie Coleman and Dorian Yates looking at Brandon Curry and saying he wouldn't even place in the top 5 back in the 90s when they competed. So I think that probably got to him. And, you know, we talked about an analogy of like being the Joe Frazier. I think Brandon wants to be the true Mr. Olympia. He doesn't want to be this guy who happened to win because it wasn't that good of a lineup. So I know that he's going to, you know, come in great shape. Is the sport regressing? I just think there's been a lot of changes in the sport. You have so many divisions now. There's so many pros. I'm not necessarily like, when it comes to pros, everybody, it seems like they give out pro cards like, you know, candy. You know, but, you know, in saying that, there's a lot of pro cards, but still the top bodybuilders rise to the top. You're going to have those few guys that are going to be the top guys. Last year was very exciting because you had a Hadi Chupin who was relatively a dark horse to place 3rd. And I haven't seen that in a long time, where a guy who's never competed in Olympia gets 3rd.
You were also in your first show, in your first Olympia, you came 3rd, I think.
I came 3rd. The first Olympia, I came in. I was a dark horse.
22 years old? 23?
I was 20. I just turned 22. I just turned 22. Wow. And in that show, which was exciting, you know, I won the light heavyweights, and they said, you know, I had a lot of the quasi-experts saying I would not go far in bodybuilding as a pro because as a light heavyweight, I was only 188. I went into the Night of the Champions, which is now the New York Pro, and I went into that show at 218. So I totally changed my physique, because I was much fuller. So going, coming second to Albert Beckles, and everyone's saying I was supposed to win that show, but then going into the Olympia and getting third place in my first try, that's exciting. And I think the sport needs more excitement. When Ronnie came in third, that was very exciting because this is a guy who never competed in the Olympia and gets third place.
Yeah.
This show is exciting because you have Phil Heath, who hasn't competed in 2 years, making a comeback, and you have a changing of the guards. A lot of these guys he hasn't competed against, or maybe he did, but they were like very low. I don't know. I don't even know if Phil competed against Brandon Curry. I know he competed against Dexter Jackson. I know he competed against, Big Ramy. So, but there are some newcomers that he's going against. And I look at it. I remember when I first talked to Phil Heath and he won his, I don't know, he was on his second Olympia. He goes, I'm going to win 10 times.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I remember.
And now he sees it's a little harder than he thought because not only because there's, newcomers, it's your body.
Yeah.
You can't go through that grueling training and not have effects. Look what happened with, the hernia. And, if his body, of course, if he looked like he did in the first 2 or 3 Olympias, he could win the show, but he didn't. And he lost. Guys like Ronnie Coleman, I don't feel he should have won his last Olympia. I thought that he was off. He had problems with nerve damage in his back, and they still gave him that 8-time Olympia. I think with Phil, why they didn't give him the Olympia, because of that reason. They don't want a guy just getting or 10 Olympias,
Yeah.
So
I'm curious, Rich, with your own pro career, I sometimes think back and realize how brief your pro career really was. When you look at someone like Dexter, who was, Dexter's been competing as a pro since 1999. He's still friggin' up there. So you did like I said, you were top 5 in the Olympia for 6 years in a row. And I think it was you broke your neck, correct? Is that?
Well, what happened was I had a severe herniation of the 2 discs in my neck. And like Ronnie Coleman, what happens is when you herniate and you stop the nerves from sending, as the doctor knows, sending nerve impulses to the muscle atrophies. So yes. I had my total right side atrophy, to a point that that would be noticeable to compete again. So I wasn't, and it actually was happening because what happened was, like you said, I competed in those 6 years. And then what happened is my body started having issues with my neck. By the way, the reason why is I had what's called a military neck. I was born with one of the discs I didn't have a C3 disc. It was basically fused. So the disc above and the disc below were much weaker. I found out later on. So they both herniated.
Were you operated?
You know what? I should have got operated on, and I didn't. And if I did, I probably could have regained some of that nerve damage to the muscle. I let it heal naturally. And what happened is, like, if you're in a car accident, you sever your lower back, you're crippled for life. Kind of similar, the weakness or the nerves that got hit affected my tricep and my pec.
It's a brachial plexus, yes, over here. Yes.
It's funny because certain muscles are still strong, like my delts are growing more. Certain muscles grow more, but then certain muscles, because I don't have the nerve, impulses, the atrophy. So yeah, I had a short career. Yeah. I made a comeback. I competed up to 1997.
7.
No, I was actually gonna compete in 97, and that's when I herniated my disc, and that was the end of my career. And I already saw my body start to regress, and I didn't know the reason why, but it was because of this nerve damage. So, I had I was known for training very intensely. I think because, people go, he lacked genetics. I still had, I had good genetics, but I pushed myself way above a lot of other competitors. And I think that just put my body through much harder stress.
I mean, I think back to Dorian Yates, and it's a similar situation. Dorian's pro career was very, very short. His
Yeah.
first pro, he did one pro show in 90.
7 years, yes.
Yeah, and then by 98, by 97, he was done. That was his last
Yeah.
Olympia. He was all gone. And similar thing where he trained so hard, put so much strain on his body that it just couldn't take it for very long. I feel like that was you, Rich, because
Yeah.
you were on top of your game and you were known as the hardest training guy in the sport after Tom Platz had retired. You sort of took the title from him after that. But, I wish we had seen more of you at your best. It kind of bums me out that we only got that brief window of Rich Gaspari in his prime before all the injuries and things started affecting him.
Yeah. I mean, I believe that I could have competed into my 40s, like other competitors, but unfortunately, the injuries caused me not to be able to. And, you're right. Like, it's similar to Dorian. He had tears. I had nerve damage, between my lower back. I started seeing my calves atrophy, because I wasn't getting the impulses to my inner calves. The issues with like I said, my tricep and my pec, and my pecs were like one of the best body parts, And when I started seeing that atrophy, and I would look at pictures of myself, and I could see that in that glory days when I was at my best, I had a great physique, and then it started regressing, and other guys started beating me, that shouldn't have beat me. So, when that happens, you got to step aside, and I think it's a blessing in disguise because, I've been an entrepreneur much longer than I've been a competitive bodybuilder. And I feel that if I could have kept competing, maybe I wouldn't have gotten into doing Gaspari nutrition and becoming, successful with my company. I started in my 30s. If I started later on, I don't know what, what happened. So I always think of it, I always look at the glass half full and half empty on situations that happen to me. And I continue looking at life that way, always looking at it where, situations hit you and you have to somehow evolve. And that's what I believe in constantly. And that's why I'm still here. I've been through issues with my company and in bankruptcy and takeovers. And now, finally after, it's been a solid year that I've been in control of my company and my company's growing again. To me, it's exciting because, I have that never give up attitude that I believe has made me successful. It's not that I'm smarter than everybody. I just don't. I don't.
You're a hard worker. Hard worker.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing about you are the transition and the evolution of a successful body into a successful mind and businessman, and you have this kind of attitude, And this is, to me, it's much better than being, for instance, a coach. It's much better being a businessman rather than a coach afterwards. So let's speak about the new brand that you're going to launch next year, which is about anti-aging and well-being instead of purely performance enhancing supplements.
Well, we talk about, the evolution and evolving. I look at myself now, I'm 57, I feel freaking old. I'm 3 years away from 60.
You look 10 years younger at least.
Thank you. So I continually train and I said, what do I use? What do I do to stay looking younger and feeling younger? And a lot of it is into the supplementation. And as you said, I don't sell a lot of, I sell mostly performance products, and I slowly been transitioning to health products. We have a really good omega-3. I have a joint product, so we sell some products that are more towards health, bone broth,
Yes.
the collagen.
Excellent.
So I look at it and I say, they're actually doing well, those products, because now athletes start looking not only for performance, but they look also longevity.
Yes.
In my 50s, I feel that I want to keep doing this. Like Sylvester Stallone he's 75 and he's still training his ass off, and he looks amazing. I want to still do that. I want to be in my 90s. We all remember Jack LaLanne. He was in his 90s and still training every day at 5 a.m. And, I want that to be me. So, I want to continue. And I believe, as we age, our body's depleted of a lot of the nutrients. Our body doesn't produce a lot of the, certain, collagens. Your body produces less and less. And that's why we have problems with, skin issues.
Connective tissue, yes.
Connective tissues and all these things. So why don't I come up with a really high-end collagen product? Products for, as we age, we have more inflammation. So, products like curcumin is going to bring down, I use high doses of curcumin And you can use turmeric, but turmeric is good. But if you don't have a high 95, 96%, 98% curcumin in that product, it's not really going to work. But when you bring down inflammation, you're able to train longer. Inflammation also helps the brain, because as you age, your brain gets inflamed. So this is why you have like this foggy brain when you get older. So these are products I want to make. I'm in my 50s and I have problems, with my prostate, and it's just something that happens to people as they age. So, and it's not something men like to talk about. That men don't like talking about. Oh shoot, I can't pee that well because my prostate's inflamed. But your prostate, it's a benign prostate growth, and this happens. But there are nutrients that can help the prostate. So, heart health. The doctor and I talk about heart health. Lowering cholesterol. All these things that can keep you living longer is what I want to do with Gaspari Ageless. All natural products that help with bringing up natural testosterone. A brain booster to help, thinking clearly.
Nootropics.
Yeah, nootropics. Products for, joint health, heart health, liver health.
Yes.
Yes.
Detox.
So all these products I look at, and I want to really hone in on those type of products with the new
Lifestyle products. Yes. Lifestyle.
So,
Because
I've actually discussed, with the doctor and saying, he'd be a great advocate because he's a man who believes in anti-aging.
Yeah, I use them. The last 5 years, I'm following TRT and HRT, of course, because when I completed my bodybuilding career, I faced this hypergonadism. So I read a lot, and according to other doctors that all follow this replacement therapy, we age because our hormones decline, and aging is a disease. So we have to reverse this, along with proper food, nutrition, supplementation, and exercise, of course. So everything matches together. And yes, this is a must. And actually, it's a wave that is growing. And I have to tell you that Europe is kind of backwards because of this hormonophobia. I mean, the fear of hormones. And generally, they believe that the plastic surgeon or the dermatologist is about anti-aging. But the point is, proper anti-aging comes from beneath, from inside, So it's not just fillers and Botox and hyaluronate or collagen injectors.
Yeah, Rich, I'd like your opinion on that because I've talked about this with Dr. T and Dr. O'Connor many times. There's such a bias towards men in our culture where, women are free to get fake boobs, fake butt, liposuction, lap band surgery, fillers, Botox, this and that. They can do anything they want. And it's cool because, well, they want to feel better and look better. And that's good because, good for them. But if a man wants to go on TRT, which it's becoming less of a taboo thing now. Obviously, there's a couple million men, I'm sure, on TRT, but it was frowned upon. It's still a lot of people look down on men wanting to look and feel good into their older years too, as if we're not supposed to. It's not for us. Do you feel like that's changing though? Like people are finally coming around?
I agree, with the doctor that it was demonized in the United States, and I think more and more it's getting less demonized. Where in Europe it still is. Why is testosterone demonized? Well, because of athlete performance. Using steroids. Overdosing them. Bodybuilders taking high doses. When you take proper doses of testosterone to bring you at normal levels, or you use pH just slightly higher at normal levels, it does. It's anti-aging, and they've actually proven.
It's a treatment,
it's a treatment that that makes you younger, and it's just ignorance. But I believe that more and more people. It's funny. I'm from the baby boomer era. It's like 1947 to 1964. This is a big demographic of people that want to stay young, and they're trying to figure out what to do to stay young. And that demographic are usually people that are making money, and have already had their kids, and they want to do something to stay young. So because of that, this is why I think in the U.S. that this is growing. And there's more. Every time I watch TV, I see something on anti-aging. More so. These anti-aging clinics that are growing and growing and growing. So I do believe that it's going to pass over to Europe. Europe is always behind. So I believe that George is going to get there, but it's just going to take a little time. But I definitely believe in it. I do it myself. I get monitored, and I talk to George on some of the, where I should be. You have to watch your red blood cell count, because if you take too much testosterone, that can cause strokes.
Yeah.
So you really want to be monitored.
Or actually, low testosterone deals with many metabolic syndromes and facts. So replacement of testosterone is about well-being and reverse aging, and lack of testosterone is linked with metabolic syndrome, diabetes, depression, erectile dysfunction, osteopenia, anemia. And it's a cheap drug and medication that is demonized because of the abuse that bodybuilders gave.
Yeah.
That's why the medical society is so skeptical. But let's talk about supplementation, which has nothing to do with banned substances, and it's approved by FDA. So this brand that you're launching will be available overseas or just in the US?
Well, that's another issue, George. If you know the laws of different countries, a lot of ingredients are not legal in Europe, or they're not legal in South America. Everything, what we have in the US, we have a much broader usage of supplementation. We have something called the DSHEA Act, where if something that you're using is found naturally in food, it could be considered a supplement. But in Europe, it's different. They have a certain ingredients that they consider in the supplements. If they're out of that, list, it ends up being a drug. It's funny because there's so many ingredients. Well, like, I'll give an example. Like when it comes to sports performance, Yohimbine is legal in the US, but it's totally outlawed everywhere else in the world. So I have to look at what's going to be legal and not legal, throughout different areas of the world. And sometimes that's hard because I'm going to grow the brand first in the US. That's the big market. And then look at other segments of the market and see that we can grow that brand. What's very exciting is that through the internet, through social media, through Facebook ads, you can grow a company globally very quickly and be it known. We right now don't do any magazine ads, growing the company again. And not that I'm against the muscular development, because they do help. They do help. But, we were on a limited budget to try to see what worked and then we're going to go back to using magazines and, because you guys are online, you guys do stuff online. It's not just paper anymore. So you have a big amount of people as well. But when you do target marketing, you can do that and you can make that awareness much bigger. We focused on getting sales to our website, but what has happened is that focus to the website has caused other channels to say, we need this brand, because people are asking them for the brand. So the same thing in Europe. What I'm getting is I'm getting people from different parts of different countries, different countries in Europe. They're like, oh, we saw your social media. We need to get this brand. Social media has basically put us all together very quickly, and it's a much smaller world through social media. I call social media, it's the devil and it's a godsend, because there's good and bad with what social media has done, but it's been amazing. You can truly, if someone's just starting and you understand social media, you can definitely, grow a company.
So, Rich, I'm curious. You're in what is it, 140 countries? It's a lot of countries. I know that. Gaspari Nutrition.
Probably in around, I don't know, probably around 50 countries we're in. Okay. But what becomes difficult?
Exaggerator. Yeah.
But what becomes difficult is when you start going into other countries. You have the shipping, you have tariffs. So what happens is when you don't have free trade and you go into a country like, I don't know, I'm going to say Greece. I'm not sure with the tariff, but it could be like 40%. Wow. So when you get taxed 40%, because Greece doesn't really want to accept, and I'm not saying this to say anything bad about Greece. I'm just making an example. I know other countries like Japan, there's a 40% tariff. So if I ship to Japan, why would they buy a U.S. brand that's 40% more when they can buy domestic brand?
Yeah.
10, 20 years ago, it was always known to buy American products. But what's happening is that these different countries in Middle East, Europe has so many brands. There's so many domestic brands. They don't have and shipping, so it becomes difficult. A lot of the ingredients, like I said, that are legal in the U.S. are illegal in parts of the world. Agmatine sulfate, great product for pumping. It's illegal in Europe. Why is it illegal? I don't know why, but it's
So
illegal.
actually, I bought this bone broth of yours. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, this guy in the supplement store ordered it from a UK store, you know.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I bought it $60. How much does it cost in the US?
Shoot, I don't even know the retail right now. I think it's probably in the 30. It's like $30.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's double price. Actually, what happens with all the supplements in the US related to Europe? Yes.
Yeah, it's about it's
Double
it's
price.
it's definitely double. It's definitely.
But the point is, we cannot find in Europe collagen in this powder form. You know, we
Really?
just have it liquid. But it's so cool to put it in your yogurt, for instance.
Oh yeah, I love using collagen, and I use high doses. I put it in my coffee.
So do I.
My bone broth, I add it every morning in my coffee. I take it that way. I put it in my juice. That's going to be a product. You want to make sure that you have the specific collagens, 1, 2, 3, 5, and 10. They all have specific ways of helping joints, skin, hair, and nails.
Yes.
So you want to make sure you have 1, 2, 3, 5, and 10. You want to make sure you have those.
Even blood vessels, arteries, make more
Blood
elastic.
vessels, arteries, connective tissue. You want them all, and sometimes there are cheaper collagens that only have a couple of the collagens. So you want to make sure you have all of them, and that's what you want to look at, because you can get collagen from chicken, beef, fish, from eggs. There's all different, from eggshells. There's all ways of getting, or the egg, what's it called? What is it, doctor? The egg embryo, the egg, not the shell, but the inside of the egg. The actual
albumin? No.
It's early in the morning, so I just lost it. But actually, eggs have a certain collagen you only can get, So there's a lot of different collagens that you want to get into your body that help with anti-aging. As George said, connective tissue, blood vessels, hair, skin, and nails.
So tell us about your
inside out, not the outside in. People think adding creams and Botox are the way to stay young, but it's making your body healthy from the inside out.
Doctor.
So Richie, you still follow your routine, 5 to 6 meals. Eat clean and train 5 times a week.
I still eat. I don't eat 6 meals a day. I do 4 to 5 meals. 2 of them being shakes. Yeah, no. I eat 3 solid meals and 2 shakes. But my shakes are normally, my protein. I'll eat egg protein, whey protein, oatmeal, peanut butter, small amount of juice, fruit. It's basically a solid meal. These shakes that I make. So I have 2 of those a day. My training, when we I train at least 5 to 6 days a week.
Cardio and weight training separated or together?
I do on 1 day a week, just cardio on itself. The other days I do cardio separate. I do 3 days a week of cardio, 5 days a week of weight training. I train every morning. I like clockwork. I get up at 5 a.m.
Fasted. You train fasted. You live fasted.
And that's just another thing. I actually do fasting training. I never believed that, when I was competing, I had to eat before I trained.
Yeah.
And because of time constraints, like if I sat there and eat breakfast, I wouldn't get to the gym till later. And then I would train. It would be 10 o'clock. I said, no, I got to get to the gym earlier. So I started getting up earlier and earlier because of COVID. And then tried to do this fasting training. I actually feel that I stay leaner. I have my last meal before I go to bed. I have a shake, which consists of a cup of oatmeal, 50 grams of protein, a tablespoon of peanut butter. So I have that before I go to bed. And people are, you're eating right before you go to sleep. But that forms into glycogen in the morning. So I go to the gym on an empty stomach and I train, and I feel that I've been able to stay much leaner training this way and actually grew, as well. So I never believed in fasting training. I believed in fasting cardio, which you do cardio on an empty stomach, but I'm actually seeing a difference with fasting training. My lifts increasing, I what also what George, the doctor, can say is like when you're on an empty stomach fasting, your body produces more GH.
Yes.
Actually.
Yes.
So that's another reason to train.
That's why you burn fat. Yes.
Yeah. So on an empty stomach.
So, and as you told me, you're using all the brands, all the supplements of yours, huh?
I use all my supplements, plus I buy other stuff. That's why I want to come up with the anti-aging brand, because I buy other, brands, for heart health. I just came out with a liver product, but, liver health, all these different products, that I can't necessarily get with Gaspari. And, I'm selfish, so I made them with Gaspari. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make a separate brand, to push out more health.
How are you going to name it?
What's that?
How are you going to name the new brand?
Oh, the brand, it's trademarked as Gaspari Ageless.
Okay. Great.
Instead of Gaspari Nutrition, it's Gaspari Ageless.
Nice. I have to ask this because if I didn't, people are going to say, why didn't you ask them about the drugs then versus now? And I'm not going to ask you to go into cycles or anything like that, but I remember hearing what guys were using back in the 80s, and I know what people use now, and it's worlds apart. Does it bother you to see the level of abuse? Do you think the guys now use a lot more than they need to just because other guys are using it and they feel like they have to keep up with the Joneses? Because when I've talked to some of these guys and I hear the amounts, I'm like, oh my God, dude, why that much? Why do you don't need that much? And they're not going to listen to me. Who the hell am I?
Yeah.
But, what are your thoughts on that? Because when you came up, drugs really were the finishing touch. It was your training. It was your nutrition. You guys trained like beasts. You dieted from, on like fish and water.
Yeah.
And it's a totally different game now. Does it disturb you to see how much more prominent the drugs have become in the sport?
I mean, I'm a little ignorant to the amount that they're taking. I don't really, I know and I've heard what some guys are taking. Sometimes it's 5 times more than I've used, and I was always scared to use too much because I was, I worried about, what were the effects. And when I was in my 20s, I felt I was, nothing could hurt me, but still, I was still a little afraid because when I went too high in doses, I saw the negative effects that it had on me. Severe acne,
hypertension.
I had blood pressure. This is my 20s. I saw higher blood pressure, severe acne, jaundice. And when I saw that, I backed down from it because I did test I did go to a doctor.
Richie, you were squatting 7 plates, huh?
I was
Crazy.
squatting. Yeah, my best squat was 8 plates.
Wow. I was probably like 19 or 20 years old, I bet.
I did that at 20 years old. That was like a great.
And you were benching 500 back then too, I recall.
520 was my best bench.
Wow.
Now I don't do over. Shoot, I can't even do over 200 because of the problem.
I do this much, so you got me.
What was your heaviest in stage?
My heaviest in stage was 1987. At my biggest, I was 225. From that show, the following year, I went in weigh-in. I was 209. And then actually I was on stage around 212.
Was it easy for you to drop on weight and lose muscle for me to become smaller and leaner?
Yeah, I have a very fast metabolism. For me, it was always hard to put mass on. When I got bigger in 87, I was trying to beat Lee Haney at the size game. And I looked great in that show.
Yeah,
I didn't have as much detail as I did. And you know what I saw?
The first striated glutes bodybuilder.
Yes, I'm the first bodybuilder to have striated glutes. And I still had striated glutes in that show. But what happened was my waist started to look more blocky. And actually, judges told me if I look in that condition again for the next year, I was going to place lower. So I ended up getting myself leaner. And it's funny, when you talk about it, there's a lot of bodybuilders back then that you had to be at a certain, your waist and your shoulders had to look a certain way for you to win. After the Dorian era, guys were looking like refrigerators. It was just massive. Dorian had great symmetry, for a guy really, really big. But there was a lot of guys out there that, that did well, that were so big, but they just didn't have that nice streamlined look.
Yeah.
The V-taper, yes.
Just talk about shoulder. That particular show, I had that on VHS. I think it was on NBC. Did NBC Sports World do the 1 hour special for the 87 Olympia from Sweden?
Yes.
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 So I used to watch that thing over and over again. And you weren't like my favorite guy in the show because I figured, well, we're the same height. I'm from the East Coast. Maybe someday I could look something like that. Didn't happen, but still, I distinctly remember the hands on hip most muscular in 87 with that blue backdrop behind you. The shoulders were like cannonballs.
Yeah.
That's what shoulders are supposed to look like. You were just massive at that show.
I did for, at 225 at 5'8". I did, like, when I look at pictures of myself, I said, wow, I was really big. My shoulders are real big. I look like a 212 bodybuilder today, the guys, and my calves. And then when I streamlined myself in 88, that was another really, it was a great look. I was even lighter when I won the Arnold Classic, that I beat Robbie Robinson. I was maybe
Samir Bannout also.
Samir Bannout, I was about 208 in that show.
Yeah. What were you at the 88 Olympia in Los Angeles?
I did the weigh-in at 209, and then on stage I was 212.
Wow. That was the only Olympia where they had a public weigh-in, correct?
Yeah, that's why I got weighed in was the day before, when I did the weigh-in, I was 209. You saw a lot of bodybuilders, what they really weighed.
Yeah.
Like Samir Bannout was like 202. Labrada was 186.
I think even Stridham was like 225 or 230.
Yeah, it was 225. That was Stridham. I have to say, he was one of those bodybuilders, I beat. But later on, when he went into the WBF, he was massive. I mean, he put on, I think he was like 260 or 270.
He was also at the Arnold Classic 89.
Yeah, he looked massive. There was a guy that he was in the Arnold Classic, and I was still able to beat him. But in that 88 Olympia, he just wasn't as big as he should be. He was very flat.
89. I think 89 Arnold was also a 1 hour special. Pretty sure I had that one taped too.
Wide World of Sports.
Wide World of Sports, yeah.
I actually showed my family, because I'm, Italian heritage and my parents are from Italy.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't know if you know this, George, I had a DNA test and I found out that I have more Greek in me than Italian, which I was like,
have you tell that to Jimmy Mendes?
Yeah, I told Jimmy, Jimmy, I'm actually more Greek than Italian. I'm like 44% Greek and like 38% Italian. Like, how the hell did that happen? Because I can go back 3 generations.
Yeah. Did that bother you in any way, Rich? I'm just curious.
No. I think Greek and Italian are very similar. We're very similar. I was like actually proud to say, listen, Greeks and Romans conquered the world at one time.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, because my wife's Cuban and she had the test, or her sister had the test. She found out she was more Portuguese than Spanish, and that was she was a little unsettled by that. She always felt, she's like, Portuguese. I'm not Portuguese. Yeah, you are. Look. Oh,
you
man.
see how that changes how you feel. But I was like, I guess I have more Greek, in me than I thought.
Just a side. Was it the 89 Arnold that your brother did the music? Your brother was
my brother did the 87. It's My Destiny.
Yeah, your brother Michael, right? He was a composer, music producer.
He produced the song. Actually, he was so inspired. He was a musician, but he was so inspired by my passion in competing that he wrote that song. He was just so motivated, like what I did, and he wrote that song. It was actually a really good song because later on it was used at the Olympia.
Wow.
Sorry, my dog's barking, but it was they used it at the 88, 89 Olympia. They used it as the Olympia song.
Oh, wow.
It was called Destiny.
Yeah.
But I inspired him to write that song because of, what he saw I did, competing.
Yeah,
there's a documentary. The Battle of the Champions. I think you were there, and you were saying that you write down everything like Dorian, what you eat, how you train, and
actually Dorian
precisely
followed me. Just to let you know, Dorian actually said, he goes, one of the things that I learned is he kept a diary, and how I did that is because I listened to Rich Gaspari, and he says I owe it to Rich Gaspari because he kept very, very specific, journals and he actually has those journals. I think he sold those journals, like what he did for when he won the Olympia. But yes, I was very specific.
Dedicated, yes.
I mean,
And
people,
would
I don't
write
know if
down-
everyone knows this, but Rich, you were going to be if you hadn't been a bodybuilder, you were going to be a doctor. You were at Rutgers and pre-med.
I went to Rutgers University. I was a pre-med student.
Really?
I was high honors, and yep, I was going as a pre-med. Maybe I would have been a doctor today. But what happened is I was very young at 21. I turned pro, and then I said I'm going to take a temporary leave of absence, and then I started winning shows, traveling. I just couldn't go to college, and the rest is history. But yeah, I'm very much love the human body, and learning more about it, because as like listening to George here, it's just to me, it's like the knowledge he has, and that's why I always say, hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? Because I like to ask him questions on a lot of that. And yeah, I really do enjoy that, and learning more on the nutraceutical side and what ingredients and nutraceuticals can help you. I got more into
Richie,
that. That's why I made the brand.
back in the 80s, there were no, fancy supplementation, for the very basics, right?
Very, very basic. Right when I was competing, we were using desiccated liver. There was actually collagen proteins, because they had this liquid collagen that we were drinking, that was actually collagen back then. Amino acids, you had protein pills, but all they were
milk
they
and
weren't
egg
milk
protein.
pills. Yeah, they were just whey protein pills. They just started getting into the branch chains.
No creatine yet.
No, creatine was after my career. That came after my career.
90s, yes.
Creatine, glutamine, BCAAs, the effects of leucine. There's so many different supplements that came about, and to me, it was very intriguing. And I really got into like wanting to read more about supplementation, because I believe, even though it was very rudimentary back in the day, I do feel that it helped me, in my competition days. A lot
However,
of guys.
back then you were relying in solid food and all the food stuff, the nutrients coming from food stuff, instead of taking pills or powders. So you had to eat 5 or 7 meals a day with a wide variety of nutrients.
Yes. But I looked at other things, talking about eating, like I made sure I ate fish, because I, read about omega 3s, and that you need certain amount of fats.
And your breakfast was in a blender.
Yeah, I usually would make something where I would have an egg white, and then I would have like oatmeal with berries, and
peanut butter.
They showed that on one of those shows. They did the Arnold Special, the Olympia Arnold. They showed you making that and eating that. Some blueberry. It was like blueberries, oatmeal, protein. This huge concoction in a blender. Yeah,
because I was looking at food as just a means of, my physique. It's not like for taste. So it was eating to say I'm getting this amount of protein, this amount of carbohydrate, this amount of simple carbs. When I dieted, I was ripped. A lot of bodybuilders never believed in eating fruit. I always had a small amount of fruit.
You said you avoided gluten because it makes you look more estrogenic and smooth. That's why you cut off carbs. Yes.
You were talking about gluten-free as far back as when? The 80s?
The 80s. I studied, gluten-free diets. I saw that. You know what? I experimented. It was funny. I was trying to diet. I said, okay, I'm going to eat bread and pasta, the same amount of carbs. I'm going to follow, like a month of dieting, and then I'm going to follow a month of dieting of eating rice, oatmeal, potatoes. And I saw a difference that even though I was taking the same amount of carbohydrates with the bread and the pasta, when I was eating the sweet potatoes, oatmeal, I was getting more leaner. And I was like, why is this happening? I mean, I thought a carbohydrate's a carbohydrate, but they're not. And then I read about gluten, and I figured out, I said, you know what? I have to cut my gluten out, because I saw that making a difference in my skin being much thinner. So I think that was in 80s. That was like
you were ahead of your time. 88, I think, late 80s. In this documentary, actually.
Yes, I had it in 88, but I was doing it before that. And I go, here's one of my secrets about gluten-free diets. And I know that I was way ahead of my time, because now it's all about gluten-free diets. Like, how many years later? 30 years later. So I love studying nutraceuticals, because I felt that you could change your body, a carb is not just a carb.
Have you had arguments with these if it fits your macros people? Because they'll tell you carb is a carb. Pop-Tarts are the same as rice. It
No.
doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's funny because we talk about back in the day, Mike Menzer said a carb is a carb. And you can't compare having table
Sugars
sugar with a
and starch.
potato. And I saw the difference also, a white potato from a sweet potato. A sweet potato is much slower. If I used cream of rice, that was much quicker and could cause an insulin spike. Brown rice compared to white rice, white potatoes compared to sweet potatoes, I would see the difference in how my body reacted to the type of carbohydrates. And I strongly disagree that a carb is a carb.
And actually, in a post of yours on Instagram where we interacted, you said you had fruits post-workout, and this is the perfect timing to have a spike with fruits, of course, and it's a good sugar. It's fructose.
I would eat fruits, and if you're eating fruit, and I said, yeah, after working, I can have fruit. And it was really funny how people would react back then because fruit was very frowned upon to use, pre-contest. And I'm like, well, I'm the most shredded bodybuilder and I eat fruit for, at a show. But I knew when to use it. As he said, after my workouts, you can have fruit and it's the best time to have it.
Yeah, that's can you touch on for a second the fact that yourself, Labrada, Lee Haney, all the guys from your era got into really great condition consistently, and you didn't have coaches. It was just you. Whereas now these guys don't even want to. They don't want to eat one meal without having it laid out for them. And
they asked their coach. They asked their coach when they could go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
I really need to pee. Can I go pee?
Yeah. I do believe that today's athletes, they just don't want to be educated about their body, and you know what? It is your body. Who's not going to know your body better than you? The only time that you need a coach, and I would say, is the last couple of weeks. Yes, to look at you to say whether you're full or whether you're flat. And a lot of times when you're dieting and your brain is depleted, it's very hard to look at yourself and say, oh, shoot, I need more carbs. Or it could be the opposite. I'm taking too many carbs. And that's when you need a coach the last 3-4 weeks to kind of hone you in. But you should really know your body. You should know your macronutrients. Everybody's different. Some guys can do really well on a very high, protein diet, paleo diet, or, what they call keto diet. I never did well with that. I had to have, maybe because I'm European descent, I needed carbohydrates and proteins, so that worked best for me. But you should know your body. And I think these athletes are so much, using these pseudo coaches to help them, experts. A lot of times they just don't learn anything about their body. And
it's insecurity, to my perspective. Yeah. It's insecurity.
Yeah. I think it all happened with Ronnie Coleman. Ronnie Coleman was the first who had what's his name? What's the coach?
Chad Nichols.
Chad Nichols. When he had Chad Nichols and he won the Olympia, I mean, he was a genetic freak anyways. All he did was just hone him in a little bit. And, Ronnie came in great condition. But
Dorian had no coach.
Nope.
Dorian had no coach. Everything he did was writing it all down. Like myself, knowing your body. Everybody, what we just said is Lee Labrada did his own dieting. Lee Haney did his own dieting. Barry DeMay.
You trained with Lee Haney, right? You were gym partners. Yeah.
We were gym partners. I lived with him for 3 months, and I got to tell you, he's one of the biggest, inspirations or mentors to me, because I moved to California as an amateur. He saw how hard I trained and how passionate I was and the vision I had. And he asked me, he goes, I love to train with you. I'm getting ready for the Mr. Olympia. But I got to tell you, he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about, also dieting, training properly. It
was motivating, right?
What's that?
It was motivating.
I was very motivating. Him and I, he still talks about how we worked out. It was some of the best workouts. And, although he was the pro and I was the amateur, because he would say, you're just an amateur. I would always push him and say, what are you, lazy today? I trained hard today. I mean, I would get him pissed off. We'd go into the workout and we'd have these great workouts. I mean, it's funny, you know, and I really wish I did it. His last Olympia, his 8th Olympia, he wanted me to train with him because it was going to be his last Olympia. He wanted me to live with him in Georgia the last 8 weeks. And I actually said no. And I went back to California. That show I came in 10th. I started already having issues with my neck and all. But I wish I did train with him because that would have been a great thing to, you know, the first Olympia to the last Olympia. But it was great for him to ask me, saying, you know what, I'd really love to train with you for my last Olympia. And I got to tell you, out of the Olympias, Ronnie Coleman on his last 8th Olympia, I don't think he was at his best. But Lee Haney on that 8th Olympia in Orlando, Florida, which now it's in Orlando,
he was the heaviest, yes.
It was his heaviest, his biggest. You know, he knew he was going against Dorian, and he beat him. When you look at the pictures, he beat him hands down. And
here we are in Orlando for the Olympia again. Can you believe it?
I know. It's that was the last time that show was in Orlando was 1981.
91, yeah.
So 91 till today. How many years is that? It's a lot of years.
29. Wow, almost 30 years.
They kept it in Vegas, and I understand because, you know, Vegas is an exciting, you know, city to have it in. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic and the restrictions that they had in Vegas, I think they were only going to be able to have like a couple hundred people see the show, which was so ridiculous. So in Orlando, I know they're restricted. I'm hearing that it's like 1,200 spectators at most.
Yeah.
So it's not really high. I mean, so this is why they're doing the pay-per-view. But it is, you know, it is exciting to see Bill Heath, who's trying to get that 8-time Olympia. And the last time that happened was when Lee Haney won 8 times.
Right. Yeah. I'm excited, man. Well, we've been talking for over an hour. I could talk to you all damn day easily. I don't even realize. It feels like it's been 5 minutes.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. I want everyone to check out the pay-per-view. You can get it at Olympia Productions. Rich Gaspari will be doing the commentary along with Sean Ray for the Open. That's so.
Yes.
Congratulations, Rich. That's like the star slot that everybody top billing.
I know. I was so excited to, you know, that when he, you know, when Sean asked me and they said, we'd love to have you do that, I was like, I'm in Orlando.
Yeah. And I'm for the Olympia people, I'm trying to do my best to get people. A lot of you can't get to the show, obviously. So please support the show, get the pay-per-view. It's going to go from, I think, Wednesday. They're going to be covering the Amateur Olympia. It's just one price, $59.95. $60 for like 4 days and nights of judging, finals, interviews, all kinds of stuff. It's very,
you know, from all the years, I just, you know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I said from all the years that you guys have been, that fans have been to the show, going to these expos, getting hundreds of dollars in free products. You know, this is a time that I say that if you love bodybuilding, give back to the sport.
Yeah.
You know, Jake Wood, who's taken over this show, I have to say that guy is as passionate as Joe Weider because he's losing a lot of money because of the pandemic. No way he's gonna, you know, this first year he's not making anything off of this. Yeah. So for us as fans, we should be helping him by supporting and buying the pay-per-view. Very little money, $60. If you're a big fan, you know, I know normally it used to be for free to watch the show online. Now it's pay-per-view, but this is a way of giving back to the sport that you love. If you guys love the sport, give back, you know, do that pay-per-view, go to Olympia Productions and, you know, help out because, you know, we have to keep this sport going.
Yeah. Dr. T, it's your show. I'll give you the final word here.
Well, I want to thank again, express my gratitude to Rich Gaspari, and I hope we'll see you guys perhaps in the next Arnold. I heard it's moved the summer, May or June, perhaps.
Yeah.
We shall see how it goes. And perhaps we can have another show in your show, Richie, now that you have this, not just radio, but also video.
What's your show
well,
called?
I have a podcast, actually.
Fitness, Fame, and Fortune.
It's called Fitness, Fame, and Fortune. It has to be people that are in the fitness industry that have been able to pivot to become, you know, famous, and then from famous to making a living and making money. So I've had Jay Cutler,
Lou Ferrigno, Michael Hearn.
Michael Hearn. I have had Yeah, so I've had really a lot of good guests. You know, we do shows basically on a lot of it has to do with entrepreneurship, you know, how I built my business, you know, what I did. It's not about, you know, how many sets and reps, but I mean, you know, it's funny. We had the doctor on, and it was one of our, you know, well-viewed shows because, you know, anytime you talk about something
I have to tell you
controversial,
that my medical career was based on bodybuilding, you know.
there you go.
If I wasn't a bodybuilder, I wouldn't be now today, Dr. Testosterone, dealing with bodybuilders and TRT, you know.
See, that's what's amazing. But you know, it was very interesting his show because it's very controversial. And anytime you talk about
Yeah.
testosterone, right away
course.
people want to listen.
Yeah.
So we definitely want George back on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Guys, well, thank you both so much for taking the time. And like I said, guys, you can catch Rich doing the commentary along with Sean Ray at the Mr. Olympia on pay-per-view. Go to olympiaproductions.com, supplement gasparinutrition.com. You can see the full range of the products. And he's got a new anti-aging line coming out very, very soon. That's exciting. So stay tuned for more of that. And that's it. Thank you guys both. And thanks everyone for watching Ask Dr. Testosterone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you guys.